Hey everyone, yeah, it's today's 9, well, today we're going to be talking about the weather because we're right now preparing for the first winter storm of the season, and right now I'm more concerned with the ice than the snow. And it's actually the freezing rain that I'm a little kind of concerned about. And why you should be concerned about freezing rain? Well, there's freezing rain and sleet, and people thought that freezing rain and sleet are the same thing. No, not here. What sleet is when it starts to snow in the sky, and then it goes to a layer of warm air, and then it goes back to a layer of cold air. And the warm air melts the snowflakes to raindrops. It's always started to snow, like in regards to the season here. It's just because, how much of the layer here. It's just about how much cold and warm air is where I'm at and above me here. Now many told me, why couldn't it snow at 40 degrees, but it can have freezing rain at 20 degrees? Well, the ground air is just it's just one of the factors of what precipitation you're going to get out of storms. Now, snow is when, the air above me is 32 degrees. Now, it doesn't have to be necessarily 32 on the ground. It can still snow in 32 degrees, and even though it's 35, 40 degrees on the ground, that's considered wet snow because the cold air is low enough. The bottom of the cold air is low enough so that the snow doesn't have any time to completely melt before it hits the ground. That's when you get the sticky, wet snow. The dry snow is when the entire air mass is well below 32 degrees. That's when we get the fluffy snow. And the sticky snow, that's the type of snow that just sticks on the branches and like that here. Now, sleet is when there's a certain layer of warm air above me, but the cold air and the lower part is thick enough so that the raindrops freeze up completely before it reaches the ground. That's the ping, 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 ping. The pellets. That's sleet because the drops completely froze before it reached the ground. And now we get into freezing rain. That's the bad part of freezing rain. That's the stuff that falls as rain and then it ices up on contact. The one that, you see, sometimes you see those branches and in case of ice here. This is because the this is because the water on the branch froze when it was, because the air around is below 32. That's why what falls on this stuff freezes. That's the air around it freezing the water that's on the stuff. That's the power. And the reason why that's a concern is because you get the water that's on the branches. And remember, water warms and cools slower than air. That's why you can still get snow when there's a thin layer of, even though there's a thin layer of warm air on the ground. That's why you can get wet. That's the type of wet snow because it has partially melted before it reached the ground. And freezing rain is the opposite case. We have warm air aloft, but a shallow of cold air on the ground. Cold air thin enough that the rain cannot completely freeze before it reaches the ground. That's freezing rain. And of course, if the entire air is thick enough for the snow to completely melt and it's still warm in the ground, that's rain. That's the type of precipitation. So right now we're hoping that we can have for either sleet or rain, but not freezing rain, because that's the stuff. Freezing rain's the worst type of precipitation on the stuff. Probably even worse than wet snow. Wet snow is bad precipitation because that's the stuff that sticks in the trees, brings them down. Power communication lines can come down because you can lose internet here. Now, many people are asking, which are power lines on the stuff here? Typically, there's like those 3 wires on the top, and then the twisted wires on the middle, and the 2 or 3 wires on the 3 thick wires on the bottom. The top wires are the high energy wires. I mean, the one that's a step down from the primary wires, the big wires on these trusses type of ones here, the really high voltage. The three top wires are still high voltage wires. The top three ones, and these are the tens of thousands of volts of electricity, more amperages and like this stuff here. The middle wire, these are the 120 volt wires. So the twisted wires, like those are the power lines that these are electrical wires, so power lines that brings the power to your house. So if these come down, that is where you have to stay away from here. The communication wires, those are the thick ones that are on the bottom. These are communications, the internet, phone, cable, TV, whatever it is. These are the bottom three wires, 2 or 3 wires. The thick wires on the bottom. There's actually many wires encased in a tube wire. That's what these things are. So the middle and the top, it's basically the twisted wires in any of the 3 wires that are like down. Those are the ones that can shock you. But regardless of these, just stay away from down wires, and hopefully we won't get much freezing rain out of this, the stuff that encases in front of the icing here. But yeah, I mean, a lot of freezing rain over here, but we're hoping that we don't get like 1/4 of an inch or more of ice on the trees, because that's the type of stuff that can, the freezing rain, where it rains and then it freezes on contact. So yeah, first storm of the season, and so yep, make sure you charge your stuff, and if you got power banks, great. So yeah, it's JD out. So right now, I think the park's gonna be beautiful though on Monday.